Welcome back to another episode of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast, the number one insurance podcast in the world for growing your insurance business. I'm Glenn Shelton, and I'm joined by special guest Douglas Massi. If you caught our episode last week, we absolutely tore down final expense sales, and really it turned into some of the best sales training we've done on the podcast. Check out that previous episode. I want to say it was 137 last week. Today, we are getting into something Doug hinted at last week on the podcast, which is crazy stories when you're out in the field. Christian and I did an episode a few weeks ago getting into this, and it was one of our best episodes we've done. I just love the idea of we all have kind of these shared insane stories of dealing with prospects. Final expense in particular is a special breed of prospect, and I'm sure we'll get into a lot of those details here later. Now, with that being said, before we get to today's main topic, something that's been coming up now, I've seen over and over the past couple weeks, is a change in what's called the heat model for some of these Medicare call centers. So for those of you who aren't aware of what that is, the heat model was essentially an LOA model where a call center could say, hey, upline, I will contract as an LOA with you, but I need you to front me roughly like 2 to 3 years of commissions. So you're getting the 2 to 3 years of renewals jam-packed up front. You don't own that client as the call center, whether you're the call center owner or you're the agent in the call center. There's no ownership on that client. You don't get any renewals. So you're essentially passing that client along to your upline or whoever you're doing the heat model with. And then, of course, there's some like chargeback terms in there. Usually the chargeback terms were pretty lenient on these heat model deals. They're giving them 6 months, as long as that client was on the books, you got to keep that entire upfront commission of roughly 2 to 3 years of what would normally be renewal payments on a traditional Medicare model. And the reason this has become topical today is it is starting to go away. We're seeing some of these uplines and some of these companies saying, hey, sorry, we can't do this anymore. It's not working. It's not profitable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And here's the last thing I'll say, and then I'd love to hear, Doug, kind of your thoughts on that whole model and why you might think this is going away. But one thing that it seemed to kind of come up time and time again with this is it was a bad experience for the Medicare beneficiary. These call centers are just trying to jam out as many apps as they possibly can. As long as that client stuck around for at least, whatever the window was, 3, 6, 9 months, I'm sure everyone may have had a different deal in place. They didn't care, right? They could care less what that person did. So that being said, Doug, thoughts on the heat model and this model kind of going away?
Well, I mean, the idea of being advanced commissions for renewals that haven't happened, it's kind of not sensible for Medicare. I mean, for a few reasons here. I'll give you one great example. So like my wife, a big part of her day, it seems like, she's been selling, Medicare, a lot of Medicare Advantage mainly. And she'll get a client that'll call in. It seems like this happens a couple times a week easily. Client calls her. They want help with something. She realizes while helping that the client's no longer hers anymore, that somewhere along the line, someone switched her. So now it's like, okay, what is she supposed to do? Help the client that's not hers. What these call centers are doing, and unfortunately not all of them, let me step back a second. What a lot of them are doing though is anything they can to get a client a new enrollment, a new plan.
Yeah.
Anything they can, whether it hurts the client or not, period. Whether it's in the best interest of the client or not. That's unfortunately, to me, a market where, so that's your, if that really is true, if what I'm saying is true, then why would you front somebody commissions? And that's what it is. You're advancing them commissions on renewals when it's hard to even get them through the first year. I mean, I hate to say it. I know that, look, guys, if you're a good agent and you're good with your clients, and you're probably thinking, well, Doug, is your wife's having these clients switched out. Is she telling them not to give her information on the phone? Yeah. Yeah. She's sending them automated texts on a monthly basis. She's doing everything possible. When she meets with the client, she mainly does face-to-face. She's saying it over and over, never get out any information to anybody. I'm your Medicare agent. If someone calls and they say they're from, for example, insert carrier here, Humana, what have you, do not give them any information. There is no proof. There's too many people scams. She's having this conversation multiple times and they're still getting switched. It's like, look, it's the senior market. Unfortunately, if you're a scammer, if you're a scumbag, they're the market to take advantage of. They really are. So, my question is, why were these, why would you advance anybody a renewal commission? It just, to me, I don't know. I'm surprised that they're still doing it. Really. That's my thoughts.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, the comparison in the life insurance space, I was thinking about it this morning before we went live here. Imagine the life insurance space if they were going to front like 2 years of commissions, to sound like already a 9-month advance, which is kind of the standard in the life insurance space, that can already create so many problems
with final expense, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, with your traditional life insurance, not so much, but
True.
With final expense, we're dealing with low income seniors. We're dealing with people, here it is, in the middle of the month, that are going, shoot, I've got $75 to get me through, to feed me through the rest of the month until the 3rd. I mean, it just, life insurance, especially, that's how agents, believe it or not, agents that don't take care of their clients, it's easy for life insurance final expense agents to easily get in debt if they're not doing their business right.
100%. I mean, so the idea, and so part of this conversation, and I've seen some different comments kind of floating around of like, basically one of the takeaways is that the incentivization behind just getting the app in place and not incentivizing taking care of that beneficiary long term will always create this environment where it's negative for the beneficiary specifically. I kind of feel like the traditional model of having strong renewals in the Medicare space is really what can incentivize better customer service and taking care of beneficiaries. So, I don't know if we'll see this heat model 100% disappear, but it seems like some of the bigger players in this space have already started to pull back. And the other part of this is complaints that, people complain, they get to CMS takes those complaints to the carriers take those complaints to the downline takes it to the agent. It's this cyclical, again, kind of not taking care of the beneficiary, and it paints all of us in a bad light. None of us are having a good time when this creates more compliance because of these complaints. And that's kind of a whole another part of this conversation is, some of the bad actors, the bad call centers. And like Doug said, again, on record here, not all call centers are doing bad things, but there are so many that fall into this category where they're just trying to jam out an app at all costs possible. They don't care about the beneficiary. They don't care if it's the right plan for them. That's where it can get just super problematic. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out moving forward kind of down the road. But Doug, what are your thoughts on, because this was another thing that I saw come up, is a database for tracking complaints, because a lot of people believe that there are some specific bad actors in the call center space. Do you think CMS could come up with a complaint database to try to help track some of these call centers or some of these bad agents, bad agencies?
To start with, yes. Look, I'm not a fan of CMS/call centers. I'm probably your devil's advocate, and for anybody who will tell you that, that the telesales is fine for Medicare Advantage. I kind of don't feel that way. I have been in the house sitting with a final expense client many times when the phone would ring and they would pick it up, and I would sit there and listen to someone trying to convince them to give them their information within a minute or two. Like just super manipulative. So my feeling is that most call centers are those bad ones. That's let me just say that. I mean, that's just how I feel because of my experience. And
Yeah.
here's the messed up part. I feel like even the better ones, the ones that, aren't, the total scumbag ones, they're still misleading the client because their job, no matter what, is to sell insurance. And in most cases, these people don't sit there and the agents aren't trained. Well, listen, whatever you do, make sure that any recommendations you make or anything you do is to help the client first. Make sure I don't see I'm sorry, I just don't see them doing that. I see them being sell first.
Yeah.
Everything else is secondary. With that being said, CMS knows this. If you're with CMS and you're watching this, we know you know it. Why are you allowing this? Why just, you know what's going on.
Oh yeah.
That's,
Hey, Mehmet's right here, Doug. They're definitely watching. And we've got Mehmet right here behind me. Dr. Oz, CMS administrator. He knows. He knows what's going on.
Then why allow it in the first place? Why not really tighten down? Why not have proof? I mean, literally do things like, okay, here's the thing. They get so many complaints. I know these call centers are getting complaints. They're getting so many complaints. And I've never seen a story where so-and-so call center got shut down for illegally selling Medicare Advantage. You never see that. You know what I do see? More call centers doing Medicare, more and more and more.
I mean, I would say maybe once in a blue moon. Like you could probably find an article here or there where it's like, but the comparative of how many are operating in a way where they should be shut down, it's a drop in the bucket. When Christian and I have had this conversation before on the show, a lot of times what we point back to, and I still would probably say this is a big culprit, is they don't have the resource. CMS doesn't have the resources to enforce their own rules. And so that's what gets really crazy about this whole situation is they will obsess over how can they create the best rules to create a compliant environment that helps everybody. And they'll put these rules together, they'll vote on it, they'll publish it, it officially becomes a rule. And then all of a sudden you have people not following these rules at all, but then they're like, hey, insurance carriers, you really need to police these people. Well, you think the insurance carrier who's profiting off the call center, and when they look at their total production, right, they don't want to take some of their biggest producers in that sense and shut their doors because they're supposed to be the Gestapo and show up and say, hey, you're doing this wrong. That's the system that's in place right now. There needs to be more of an independent party there. Like if CMS actually had, whether it was CMS or some other third party that could actually come in and, but maybe the money coming, but yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, at the end of the day, CMS has made it really hard for the independent agent who wants to do things compliantly to succeed. And they've made it real easy for the scumbag call centers to just crush. It's all about the money. It's all about the financial incentive. At the end of the day, the independent agent who tries to do Medicare Advantage sales through telesales independently struggles. Meanwhile, the call centers, the people that own the call centers, they're just raking it in. Not cool.
I totally agree. I think it does. It's all about the money. I think what's going to be interesting though is if the as we see the heat, because the heat model has been fueling a lot of these call centers. You guys, not all of them. Some of them aren't on the heat model, but you'd be surprised. A lot of these call center owners that I have talked to, they have been really funding their call center through this heat model. So if we start to see this heat model go away, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Now, ironically, a lot of them, it sounds like, might be pivoting to final expense to try to fill that gap. Because again, switching from from a cash flow standpoint, if you're switching from this heat model where you're getting fronted all these commissions to traditional Medicare contracts, you are dealing with a cash flow nightmare as a business owner. You're going from this huge upfront cash flow every time a sale's made to now you're getting a third or potentially less, depending on how your contracts work. So, some of them might be switching to other products like final expense. But that being said, we're already about 20 minutes in here. I want to talk about today's sponsor of episode 140, and then we're going to get into some crazy agent stories with Doug, and I think he's got some good ones. I dug a few more up for you guys that I didn't get into last time myself. But today's sponsor of episode 140 of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast is our Everything Senior Insurance AEP 2026 virtual kickoff webinar. This is happening September 8th. That is a Monday at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We are getting on with some of the major Medicare carriers who will be sending representatives. We're going to be spending all day going through what to expect this coming AEP. If you are scared or nervous about AEP, which I know a lot of you are, I'm getting the DMs, I'm getting the messages, what's going on with this plan, what's going on with this carrier, stay tuned, join this webinar. I'll make sure the link is in the comments so you guys can get on. It is 100% free. Anyone is allowed to be on there. And we're going to spend all day, 8 a.m. Mountain Standard to 4 p.m. Mountain Standard. I'll talk. Christian will be talking. We'll have several of the major Medicare carriers talking about what to expect this AEP. So that being said, getting into some crazy agent stories. Doug, if you want to take it away here with one, and then we can kind of go back and forth. I have kind of three I made a note of. So we'll see how far we get. But let's get into this.
Let me just start with, understand, guys, I sold final expense for face-to-face full-time for at least 7 years as a road warrior. So we're talking, I've, living right outside of Miami, I've driven as far as South Carolina to run leads. I've flown to Mississippi, Missouri, Alabama, Louisiana, Georgia, where there were leads, just because I was able to sell at such a high level. So the point being, I've seen a lot of things. Now in Florida, yeah, that's probably home is where I've probably seen the craziest stuff.
I was going to say South Florida. If I had to guess, I'm like South Florida. When you're telling me you were driving to South Florida last time we were down, like there's got to be just some crazy stories.
I mean, Florida as a whole. So look, so what have I seen? I've seen the hoarders. You've seen the TV show The Hoarding, where you pull up to the driveway and you see a bunch of stuff like packages on the porch. It's so bad that when they open the door, there's nowhere to go inside. I've seen that. I've gotten out of the car and realized there was an alligator sitting between the two houses. Okay, I've seen that. I've walked up to the front door to door knock a lead and seen the snake go running. So you see the nature stuff. And I've gotten to the point to where there were times when you'd go to the house, and unfortunately, a lot of low income seniors, they don't have much help. They can't take care of themselves, And basically the environment is really unhealthy. It's hard. Like even people that didn't smoke, you'd walk in the house and you could feel like the asthma problem kicking in. You're like, whoa, can we go sit outside on the porch? And so I used to porch myself regularly because of that, or even go sit on the trunk of my car and make a sales presentation. I've had tweakers where you go to the house, and I remember this one appointment I had with a lady. My appointment setter set the appointment. So back then I was getting a lot of appointments. I was running a lot of good appointments. I get to this appointment. The guy's looking all crazy that opens the door, invites me in. So I'm there to meet, I don't know, his mom or sister, who knows. I come in, and as I go to make the presentation, he's like, the only way for me to describe it is he looked dangerous, and really like that vibe was real bad, where I remember I got out of there. I was like, well, listen, I did something like, you're looking for life insurance, right? Like I did something to try to kill the deal.
Right.
Like,
You're going.
And she's like, no, not really. I'm like, oh, okay, no problem. Well, we'll check back with you later. Like I got out of there. I've seen that. I had a guy, I make a presentation. Him, and I think it was his mom. Like she was much older. He was probably in his 50s, low income folks. And I remember they're just rude to me the whole time. And at one point I used to have this big sales book. So we're talking 10 years ago, there was no walking in with an iPad or anything like that. I had this big old sales book. I remember slamming it. It was enough. I got up, I opened the door, and the screen door was one of those screen doors where, they usually have a mechanical thing that keeps it from slamming. I remember pushing the screen door and it just went kaboom. And the guy, they get all upset with me. Now he's chasing me, yelling, walking behind me, yelling at me. I get in my car. He picks up this big rock. And I remember rolling the window down going, don't do it, buddy. You're going to go to jail. Don't do it. Like he was walking me off his property, like crazy stuff like that. Here, Glenn, have I ever told you the booby lady story?
I don't think you have. Okay.
So this was, a couple of years. I was already experienced. So first appointment, back then I was driving sometimes a couple hours away and then work in an area. So I had an appointment set. It was an early morning one. That's what I remember. There was fog and dew everywhere. It was like 8:00, real early appointment. I get to this mobile home. I wake the lady up. She's in her robe. She invites me in. And the next thing you know, it's, this is a much older woman with big, anyways, the robe opens up and boom, it comes out. And it's just, so she realized it. I wasn't rude. I wasn't looking, I wasn't rude. And, she covers it back up. Within a minute or two, boom, it's back out again. So I'm making the presentation, and that's not my first experience with nudity, by the way, with a weird situation like that. But I remember I made the presentation. She bought the insurance. So, she signed on the dotted line with assistance. It was crazy. So that was one that you don't forget. The whole time it's there, the distraction.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the all-time. That's the sort of story I was looking for from you, Dan. I'm sure you have more. Okay, I'll get into. I've got a couple here.
What you got, man? What you got?
So this isn't like a crazy story. This is almost more of like if you're getting into the life insurance space, especially final expense. If you're getting into this space and you're wondering like what sort of objections you're going to come up against, like this is just one of those insane objections you're going to get. So direct mail lead for mortgage protection. I was working at the time, which a lot of these turn into a final expense sale, right? It's a senior, they're in their late 60s, early 70s. So you kind of get out there and you have to talk them down and be like, hey, you can't qualify for 300,000 in coverage. However, I can get you a final expense plan. So I get out there, not as far as like final expense houses go, a little nicer house, kind of a nicer neighborhood. It wasn't a trailer. They had a dog, kind of like a little like Chihuahua dog. And her husband, so it was a couple. The husband was pretty sick. We're going through medications. He's getting his meds out. I'm writing the list down. We're at like probably 20 meds. And I'm sitting here and I'm going through in my head. And as soon as we get through a few of these, I'm like, there's no way he's qualifying for anything. But again, I had a guaranteed issue option, right? So I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, because there was definitely a high desire there. He didn't have any life insurance. She was really, really worried about it. They were, there was like a new car out front, kind of a mid-level home. I'm thinking this should be a slam dunk. There's obviously some type of money here. There's definitely a need, definitely a desire. I have a solution, right? It's not the best solution, but I can get him some coverage. And the cost of it comes up, and it's pretty much an immediate no. It's just no, I can't afford that. But what the crazy part of this story is, we're talking about the dog, kind of doing the loop around, right? Like, we'll talk a little bit more, and then we'll come back and talk about, I think you can afford this. You need this. You said you want it. He doesn't have anything. We're talking about the dog. She's talking about all the insurance she has on her little dog, her Chihuahua. She had life insurance on her dog. I don't know what company it was through. That was the first time I'm like, and then I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay. I'm like, you are paying a monthly premium for life insurance on your dog. But, here we are. Your husband doesn't have life insurance. We know he's getting relatively close to end of life here. Like, we're all on the same page with that. I have a solution here where we can get him some coverage, and no matter, so that happened. But then this is where it gets really crazy is I then hire an appointment setter, and I just gave all my old leads to them, leads I hadn't closed. I end up back in that house a month later, and I'm thinking, okay, they came to their senses. I'm coming back out to the house. I'm thinking they definitely want it. I sit down. We do the same song and dance all over again. And I wasted a whole nother appointment slot at their house a month later. And I'm just like, I'm never going out to the house again. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, you're more worried about your little puppy than your husband. And yeah, that was just infuriating for me as an agent. I would just couldn't believe it. I'll never forget how upset I was leaving the house the second time. I was like, this is insane.
Yep. You're a sucker for going back.
Yes. Yes.
Have I ever told you about my stalker?
No, but I definitely need to hear this.
Not really a stalker, but I think that was a good lead, right?
Yeah.
When I first was recruited into the insurance industry as a Hartford life insurance agent, we specialized in mortgage protection. So now we're going back about 17 years. So you got a 17-year-old younger version of me. I was a salsa dancer. Right around that time is when I actually met my wife, she made her my girlfriend, turned her into my wife, right. So I wasn't a bad looking guy. So I would tend to, the attitude was at the office was that if I was going to go sell a single lady, I'm coming back with an application. If I'm making a presentation to a single lady, I'm coming back. That was kind of the attitude in the office.
Yeah.
Well, not always.
This episode of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast is brought to you by the Seven Figure Medicare Agent Summit. Guys, it is a fact that getting around other people that are chasing the same ambitions and destinations in their business as you is a great thing, and it can propel your business years ahead than not getting around people and networking and going to live events. The Seven Figure Medicare Agent Summit is the premier event. Every year we hear year after year after year that it is the event that has the best content. So many events nowadays, they do a lot of pitching from the stage. They're really just there to sell you things. And if nothing more than that, they're just a bunch of vendors put together and they're just nothing but networking. There's no content. The summit is the best of both worlds, you guys. The summit puts together great, fantastic speakers from all ends of the industry, and also get you in a room with like-minded individuals from all over the country that are trying to build their business just like you. The summit this year is taking place in Salt Lake City from June 22nd to 24th at the Hilton Hotel. We still have tickets available. We'd love to have you come out for the event. We are over 50% sold out at the time of recording this, but get your ticket now while you can. This event will sell out, and we'd love to see you there in Salt Lake City.
I made the presentation with this woman. The negative was that she didn't have children. She didn't have a spouse, right? So we're selling life insurance, mortgage protection. She just got a condo. She had a really good job. It's funny. I remember she was like a higher up person at the community college. So she made, she was one of the bosses. So she made a decent living back then. And so I make the presentation, and when you're going over the need is, of course, family, right? Doesn't have a current need. So it's a little bit more difficult. So now it's the future when you get it, when you get the family, when you have the children, that was the sell. Bottom line was I spent the time with her and I couldn't sell her. She was one of the ones I couldn't sell. I get home later that evening.
So scared.
The phone rings. The phone rings, and it's her. All right, cool. I'm like, all right, go. When do you want me to come by and write you up? So, oh, by the way, so in my mind, this was, oh, geez, I wasn't years into it. I was still months into it. I was getting real good at that point. And so I was getting the reputation of being the guy that closes all the single ladies, right? That was kind of it. But at that point, I still always thought that one day I'm going to get a call back. Never got the call back, guys. So this was my first, I'm thinking, until she said, I'd like to meet you for coffee. That's how it started. So here's a lady. She wants to go out with me. She's interested in me. I'm caught off guard, not sure how to act. And I remember I was like, well, I got a girlfriend, so that's the truth. Yeah, I can't do that. I'll get fired. I've got a girlfriend, every reason not to. And so that was that. A couple days later, the phone rings again.
Oh,
same thing.
Oh,
more persistent. I think she called another time and I didn't answer. I'm not real clear about it, but I feel like she actually did call again. She didn't leave a message when I recognized the number. But that was the closest to a stalker that I got. It got scary when I got that second call and had that second conversation that was really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I can't say I've had a quote unquote stalker before, but I know I've told this story on the podcast before, but I had an older gentleman who was, I'll say, also into men. Okay. And he was, it was again, a mortgage protection direct mail lead. Had like a condo at like almost like a penthouse suite in downtown Portland, and get this lead, go down there, and it was another situation of appointment got drawn out. He was talking about how his partner was in California and he was living alone and how lonely he was, and how he really needs this coverage because Javier, or whoever it was down south in California, had nothing if he were to pass away. And again, it's turned into a second appointment, which a lot of times, again, as I'm having these conversations with you, maybe the moral of the story here is like, if you ever have, there's exceptions to every rule, but it seems like every time I'm having to go back out a second time, it almost never goes the way you want it to go. But that second time I went out there, it was so clear that he had no interest in actually buying the policy and just wanted to keep me around because he was so low. Oh, what about this? And I think he even invited me. He was trying to invite me out to lunch by the end, and I'm just like, no. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I gotta go. I got another appointment. See ya. And just had to hightail it out of there.
My wife has got a lot of clients that just call to check in. She's one of those people that really does build good relationships, but I do notice the men push it a little bit. The men do tend to push it. You know, she's got clients she's had for years that she will literally go to their house, you know, local people, and visit them once a year just to make sure they're happy and everything is cool. So I see a little bit of that. I used to use the sex appeal. I'll be honest. That was, you know, when I got into final expense, I still did it. And I would have, there would be older ladies that would be a little flirtatious. That one woman, that wasn't the first time I got asked, you know, out to coffee, so to speak. So you see that kind of stuff. Now, did I ever tell you about the nudist colony?
No, I definitely haven't heard this one.
Okay. So, you know,
That's the lead. That's the lead right there.
So, Diana, my appointment setter, she's got a note, you know, in the appointment. I used to print everything out. Every page was the lead, you know, so to speak. When she would set the appointment, everything would be on a paper, the calendar. And in the notes, she'd write something. And it was like, she wrote something in the note that was like, nudist colony, special permission to come in. They'll put, the note said something like, they'll wear clothing if you want, like something like that. In other words, if I'm not comfortable. So we get on the phone and she's like, yeah, these people are real. They're in this little nudist colony. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. It didn't really dawn on me till I was pulling up, and I was like, this really is the nudist colony. It really is. You know, you get there and it's like a metal sheet aluminum fence, so you can't see in. And everything is different. And so they buzz me in, and you're walking in and you see signs, like joking signs, like beware of naked people or something, you know, something kind of cute. I come around the bend, and here's a guy on the bicycle. And I'm thinking, dude, don't get those things caught in that chain, man. I mean, I remember, like, oh my God. So we're talking now, wait a minute, guys, for those of you who've never been to a nudist colonies aren't full of, you know, 20, 30-year-old hot looking people. Right. These are seniors and most likely older. And that was this scenario. So of course it's a mobile home park and they're in the last one. So I got to drive through all this. And really the one thing that stuck out was the guy on the bicycle. That was the crazy thing. Went by the pool, you've seen people laying out. So I get there, as I'm pulling up, he comes out butt naked and he's, well, look, this is how they live. And he's like,
crazy.
He said something like, you know, if you need to, you know, us to wear clothes, just let me know. And I was like, okay, I didn't know how to react. So, you know, the smart thing would have been like, yeah, if you could put on some clothes. I don't know what I said. I don't think I did, because when I got in there, you know, it was the booby lady, you know, but with no accident, you know, it was the two of them. And so I make the whole presentation, right? I'm fighting it. I'm sweating. It's a little awkward and uncomfortable. I went through the whole presentation. They didn't buy. And that's probably the worst part, was because I really put it all out there and they still wouldn't buy. The one thing that just at the end of the day, and I know it's not the greatest story, but was that the dang guy, the guy on the bicycle. I mean, if you picture what I'm talking about, there was definitely potential danger there for him. Okay. While he's pedaling the bike.
Oh my gosh. That is terrifying as a male. As a male, I am terrified by that story. Um, I've got another one. So it's always, the trailers are always crazy. I mean, you mentioned the hoarder thing earlier. There were so many the hoarders. I remember one in particular, and this isn't the story, but just the hoarder thing kind of triggered some memories for me. I remember one where they had like stacks of newspapers, right? It's always like stuff that it's like, why would you even hang on to it, right? Like imagine just like a pillar of newspapers and just other junk. Like you're literally like going through like the whole, you happen to like shuffle through. So crazy to see how many people are just holding on to stuff like that they don't need to hold on to. Um, so that being said, so the one that another one that kind of I wrote this one down because I didn't bring it up last time. Christian and I got into crazy stories, but it was a trailer park, and this was a true final expense lead. And part of dealing with the final expense community, and Doug, I'm sure you have a lot of stories like this as well, is you almost get to the point where you're trying to evaluate their mental coherency pretty quickly, right? Like I'm almost, especially like after you've done enough final expense appointments, you just start to show up and you're like, are you sane enough to even have this conversation? Like, are you even able to move forward? Are you on too many medications? Whatever it is. And there's a lot of people, unfortunately, and this is again kind of sad, but there's a lot of seniors who are living alone. There's no one else there. There's no family. There's no spouse. And once they start to decline mentally, there's really nothing you can do to help them, even if they do need our help, right? As an agent, whether that's for Medicare or for final expense. So get to this trailer. Obviously, I'm still a little bit newer, and I'm really wanting to make that sale. And he doesn't seem all there. And we're sitting there in like kind of the front of the trailer, and then he's like, "Well, come back here. Come to the back of the trailer. Come back here." And I'm thinking, because I think I'd already gone through some of the presentation at that point, and so part of me is thinking like, oh, maybe I can get his checkbook. Like I mentioned, it would be automatic draft. I need that voided check if we're going to do this. So we go back, and again, small trailer, and he's sitting on his bed in the back of the trailer, and there's nowhere for me to sit. So I'm sitting with him on his bed, and then I'm looking around. All the walls of his bedroom, it's just jars of pot, just jars of marijuana covering the entire. And I'm sitting here and I've got my clipboard in my application and I'm already like halfway through. And then I'm just like, no. I'm like, I don't think he's even mentally coherent enough to finish this, let alone does he even have the money to pay this premium. I'm just, and he's just like kind of like showing like, woo, woo, like kind of a little loopy, just like pointing, showing something. And at that point I was like, I'm out of here. I'm like, there's no way. I'm just beeline back to my car.
I've got a mortgage protection story that I remembered, and this was a little interesting. So how do I present how this happened? If anybody knows, some people, you notice some people are really high strung. And so in Florida, in South Florida, let's go to Miami, we've got people from everywhere. I had an appointment, a mortgage protection appointment. This is, in my early days, with a couple that was either from Taiwan or China. Okay. For some reason, I remember they were Chinese. That's what I remember. Guys, like I said, I met many different places, people from different countries in Asia. So I'm kind of trying to be specific. They really were Chinese. Okay. So here you've got this businessman. So he just bought a home, needed the mortgage protection, and his wife, they didn't have children. It was the two of them. Her English wasn't very good. His English wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to where he understood. So I come in and she's doing this. It's the sour, the sourpuss, the unwanted visitor. It's like real strong body language.
For our audio listeners, Doug did the arm crossing, hugging the chest, and just the
sourpuss, like
sour face.
The wire. Why is this person here? Body language. And I start to make the presentation. So they're talking. When she talks to him, she's talking Chinese. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it was Chinese. So she's talking to him, very high strung. So it's like when she spoke, it was like boom, boom, boom. The only way to describe it. And I don't want to make fun of Chinese people, because that's probably, if I tried to interpret what I show you what I saw, that's the way it's going to look. But that wasn't the case. So just real high energy, high. She talked, and he was like trying to silence her. Hold on, just let's hear the man. Let's hear the man. And so during the life insurance presentation, one of the things that I did over and over was talk about, in the event of where you die, the first time the word die or death came out of my mouth, she stands up, she blows a gasket. Anybody who's played pinball, boom, she's bouncing off the room. So they got a door. They got a door that leads to like the kitchen or the pantry and the other part of the house. And it's one of those doors that swings. You go through it and it's still swinging, right? So boom, she gets up, starts saying something to him, and it wasn't positive, and then goes in the door. And then he's like, just talk with me. 2 minutes later, she comes through the door and starts ping-ponging around and yelling at him. She's doing it again. This kept going on throughout the entire presentation, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it was like, so here I am. I got a no-legger. I'm not even pitching a one-legger, right? I got a no-legger because he's got to get permission. I'm trying to get him to cover the importance of what happens when he dies. So I can't even throw him under the bus. So what I mean by what I used to do with a couple is, at some point when they would give me an objection, I would basically make a comment like, well, look, I'd make the comment to the husband, well, look, if I leave here and you don't have the insurance, she's probably going to start to think that you just wanted to put on a show, like you really love her enough to make sure that when you die, the mortgage is taken care of. Because she's going to end up living, with the family. So I used to do that type of throw under the bus, guilt trip type of thing. And I'll be honest with you. One of the reasons I did it was because if I didn't sell them, I wanted them to argue when I left. Okay. So I couldn't even do that with this couple because she's ping-ponging all over the place. And here's the part that got me. In the end, when it was over and I'm done, I don't have a sale, he goes to walk me to the door. She comes and walks me to the door, and all of a sudden she's really nice. Bye.
That's crazy. Some of those couples, you never know like where they're at when you get, what you're walking into as far as like with their relationship, if they're fighting, etc. So who knows?
I think with them, it felt like a cultural thing. So it's funny, when I used to sit down with Miami, a lot of Cuban folks, right? Yeah. My people, for whatever reason, people from Cuba tended to say, they would make this comment like, they would say something like, if I buy the life insurance, she's going to kill me. She's going to have me killed. They would say that. And I feel like they really meant it. Like they really feel like it was a cultural thing. So I think the second I brought up death, maybe it was a cultural thing. Maybe, they don't, I don't know. Maybe, they don't talk to the family about life insurance in China or wherever they were from, but that was what happened. Her reaction was as if I said, we're going to kill you or something. It was so exaggerated.
When you were first telling the story, that was my first thought, is like, I wonder if she almost took it as like a threat almost, right? Like let's talk about your,
that was the attitude. That was the attitude.
Right.
She was saying, we're not going to die, but the way she said it was really funny. I can't repeat it because the way she was doing it, it was funny. I mean, I hate to say it. From my perspective, when I left there, I remember calling my manager and was like, "You ready to laugh?" And, you know, telling him the story of exactly what I just went through. So
I've got one more, and then I don't know if you have anything else or if you just want to wrap up there. But okay, so this story, it's I got it was a mortgage protection direct mail lead, and I don't know if I'm sure you have, Doug, over your career because you've been doing this longer than I have. It was like a mansion. It was not the type of lead, you know, typically if someone has you know, a large net worth, they probably have a financial advisor, they probably already have life insurance. Like, you are coming in as just like an independent broker who's responding to a direct mail lead, you know, that they probably didn't even realize maybe what it was when they filled it out, type situation. But again, I'm already, you know, I didn't know. I drove out here. I'm going to talk to this person. I'm going to present. I'm going to see what's going on. So I get into the house, a little bit of an older couple, and they definitely had a high net worth, and kind of going through everything. And when I'm explaining, you know, I'm getting through my presentation, you know, this is a life insurance policy that's designed to pay off your remaining mortgage balance in the event of your death or, you know, passing, etc., yada, yada, yada. And the husband wasn't having any of it. Like, no, not interested. We don't need this, blah, blah, blah. And so then I almost out of kind of a desperation, after being in the house for a while, I was like, well, how about a life insurance policy that's for funeral costs? And I just basically said final expense instead of mortgage protection. I was going to end up, if, you know, most of the time I'm writing them a simplified issue whole life policy no matter what, right? They're older. They're not going to qualify for the sort of term policy that they might think they want anyways. So, but for whatever reason, just changing that terminology, it was like a switch went off in this dude's head. He had been so combative the whole time I had been there. And the second I said burial policy, he's like, "Oh yeah, you know what? My wife actually needs one. Let's write up a burial policy on her." And I was like, "Oh, okay, let's do this." And I actually got the app, and it was just like a $10,000 burial policy on his wife. But you know what I love about that story is I feel like so many agents don't realize the power of those marketing terms. Like, you say something one way, and it will mean something completely different to a prospect. So like, you just never know, like, if will this get through to them, or is this term going to get through to them? And so sometimes, you know, sometimes you might just gotta change it up, you know, try something a little different. But that's my final crazy story for today's episode. Doug, any final crazy stories for us?
You know, I've just you see it all. There's other, not real stories, but maybe things that I've seen. You know, I remember the first time that I went into a house, one of my very first final expense sales. So already sold mortgage protection, sold the market, been into the $1 million homes. You know, think about it. 15 years ago, $1 million home back then was worth millions now, right? Especially in Miami. Been to those were very intimidating, because in most cases you got a doctor who knows it all. They got the insurance, you know. I would say the other one thing that I can never forget is the first time there was a bug situation. So I've seen this a few times. So I go into the condominium. This is an old, smelly condo in Miami, in Overtown. That's what I remember. Overtown. Anybody who's been around Overtown, back in the 80s, a cop shot a guy off a motorcycle and they started rioting. So that was what Overtown was known for back in the 80s. And so anyways, you know, here we are. I'm in this apartment building, and this wasn't in the 80s. This is, you know, 12 years ago or so. Go up. She opens the door. It's dark inside. You know, you got to be aware of your environment. It's only smart to do that. I was always good with that. And, you know, so I remember her health was real bad. She was out of it. I remember thinking, you know, she's definitely on something, some type of antidepressant, some antipsychotic, something strong, because she's really not with it. She invites me in. That was like my first, impression of her. It's dark in there. She's got the aluminum foil, on the windows. I get her to turn on a light. It's still not much. TV, couch, and lawn chair. The old aluminum lawn chair. So I sit on the lawn chair, and as I'm sitting there presenting, I'm noticing, there's bugs on the coffee table. There's bugs on the wall, and of course, eventually, I'm doing this. They're crawling on my leg now, and so here's the worst part. Because it was new, I sold her. I didn't set the draft date up right, probably. I'm assuming because I'm new, so I got her whatever, probably asked her, what day do you want me to draft the payment off? Yeah. She probably said, the 5th when the money's gone, right? So low income, so ding dong me. So I'm trying to save it. So I went back for a second bite. So there you go, Glenn. I did the same thing, and it was the same problem. Re-signed her up. The money wasn't there. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
The second appointment, man, it's always a trap door, it seems like. Guys, if you listen all the way to the end, I hope you enjoyed some of these absolute wild stories. I had a feeling Doug would have some good ones, but man, some that even trumped some of my wild expectations for what he could have brought to the podcast today. Get into some final thoughts here today, Doug. Any final thoughts you'd like to share before we wrap up today's episode?
Yeah.
And also let everybody know where they can find you as well, Doug.
Oh, all right. So, we specialize in final expense sales, United Final Expense Services, or you can just go on YouTube and look up Douglas Massi, Massi. I've got a YouTube channel, a lot of cool training stuff there. Really, my thought for the day is when you pull up to a house and you get out of the car, and it looks like there's like a little statue of maybe an alligator right there between the houses, maybe think twice. It may not be an actual statue.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, an alligator. Oh, that's insane. Yes, guys, check out Doug's YouTube channel. Wealth of information, especially if you are looking for more info on final expense. My final thoughts on today's episode, you guys. I think one of the big takeaways going through all this stuff with Doug today is just the sheer persistency it took. You have some of these bad experiences as an agent, and there's so many times where there's that little voice in the back of your head that's like, I think I'm done. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to go through that again. But the reality is that most agents won't. Most agents won't continue through when they have these bad experiences. So by just, staying calm and continuing to move forward, you can have so much success, and just not quitting, right? That's when you really lose. So those are my final thoughts on today's episode 140 of the 7 Figures or Bust podcast. If you're listening to this on a platform that allows you to give us a 5-star review, please take a moment. We'd love to get that review. If you're on YouTube and you're watching the replay of this, hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment. And if you're here in the 7 Figure Medicare Agent Facebook group, drop a comment below the stream. We'd love to hear from you. And also, it automatically enters you into Freebie Friday, where we're going to do a giveaway every single Friday right here in the group. So all you have to do is drop a comment, and that automatically enters you into the giveaway. Doug, again, thank you so much for your time. It's always fun to chat with you, and wild stories. I've loved it. So I have a feeling our fans of the show loved it as well. Our listeners.
Let's do it again sometime.
Let's do it. Until next time, you guys. Happy selling.